Star Wars is back on the big screen with The Mandalorian and Grogu.
Gangsters, war criminals. I'll take out every bad guy in your deck of cards.
On May 22nd, feel the Force on the biggest screen possible.
The old protect the young, and the young protect the old. This is the way.
Buckle up.
Always wear your seatbelt.
The Mandalorian and Grogu. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. In theaters May 22nd. Get tickets now.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love with no artificial sweeteners and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, April 27th, 2026. On the show today, special guest Dan Pashman tells us about the food behind Tiana's Bayou adventure, plus news and listener questions. Then in our main segment, Jim finishes the history of Disney's Live the Dream project for Disneyland's second theme park, with hotels built on top of attractions. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says the good thing about Florida summers is that you know nobody's hiding in the back seat when you get in your car. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well, Len. Though, that said, I wonder how many of our listeners remember the Comedy Warehouse at Pleasure Island. They used to have that sketch show, Forbidden Disney, and there was this one blackout gag that they did where, I mean, it literally starts, the stage is dark, the audience is sitting in the dark, and all you can see on stage are the beams of 2 flashlights. And at some point in the dark, you hear a woman say, "Honey, I don't think this is where we parked the rental car." And the man says, "No, I'm certain that this is where we left it. I wrote it down. Row Z, subsection Y, the very back of the Epcot parking lot." And they says, "Yeah, look, the car's right here. In fact, your fur coat is right in the back seat where you left it." And then you hear the growl of a bear, and it's like, I didn't have a fur coat in the back seat.
28,000 acres. I mean, anything could happen, right?
There we go. And then the flashlight gets knocked out of the guy's hand, and you hear, the wife say something to the effect, "They were so much nicer at the Country Bear Playhouse."
Oh, it's just joke on joke. That's fantastic.
Yeah. By the way, just a quick note to our listeners, the very first showing of the Forbidden Disney show that from April of '89, before Pleasure Island opened, is available in 3 parts right now over at YouTube. And it has some stuff that's really, really funny, some stuff that misses, but the audience that's entirely made up of Disney cast members is really eating this up, so it's well worth checking out.
Let's put a link in the show notes.
Okay, will do.
Fantastic. Also with us is Dan Pashman, host of the award-winning culinary podcast The Sporkful, and inventor of the pasta-shaped cascatelli from the Italian word for waterfall. Here to talk about his new podcast episode on Disney theme park food. Welcome, Dan.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to talk Disney, which I'm sure. Do you two, are there some days where the two of you wake up and you're like, I just don't think I could talk about Disney today? Or is it a never ending?
It hasn't happened yet, although we're trying through medication, Dan.
There we go.
All right. So, Dan, I first heard of you through Florence Fabricant's New York Times article in 2021 about your pasta shape. But you actually launched your podcast, The Sporkful, in 2010, right after working in journalism for years. What made you want to do a podcast?
Well, it was always my dream to host my own radio show. I had a show in college radio show, and I graduated from college in 1999, and I wanted to host a radio show. So I started off as a low-level producer, thinking I would work my way up. And long story short, when I came out of college, the radio industry was kind of in decline. Internet and technology were on the rise. There were multiple recessions. So I kept getting jobs on radio shows and thinking I'll work my way up, and in 20 years I'll have my own afternoon show. And then 6 months later, the show would get canceled and I would get laid off. So I got laid off from 6 jobs in 8 years.
Wow.
And so it was somewhat bleak. But then in 2009, friends of mine from radio were like, "Oh, there's this thing called podcasting. This is going to be the future." And so I thought, if I start my own podcast, I can make myself the host and no one can cancel it but me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in 2010, the Sporkful launched back in the Stone Ages of podcasting. I had to explain to people what a podcast was most of the time.
Wow.
And it was like a side project, nights and weekends for 4 years before, podcasting started to pick up and become more of a thing, and you're able to make it into a job.
And you got some recognition on this, right? It was named one of the 100 best podcasts of all time by, I think, Time Magazine, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was incredible for sure. So we've been at it for a long time, and it's sort of grown. The show's evolved. We've won a couple of James Beard Awards, which has been incredible. And then, to make that list was super cool for sure.
That's awesome. All right, and for our listeners, since we're talking on a Disney-themed podcast, tell us about your history first with Disney theme parks. Like, when was your first visit before this last research trip? When was your most recent trip? What do you like about the park? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I went twice as a kid with my family, sort of like the obligatory everyone has to go to Disney trip. And then we went a second time because I think my younger brother was still very little the first time we went. My parents wanted to make sure he got to check that box. And so I certainly remember having a lot of fun. I remember the memories that stick out. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, I loved. And then, it's funny. It's like the little things. I don't remember where it was. You two probably know. Somewhere, I think it was somewhere in Magic Kingdom. There was like an arcade game that involved like shooting a gun at something. And I just
Frontierland Shooting Arcade.
Okay, yes. Is it still there?
Sadly, no. But it was until like recently. It was like until
so
like in the last couple of years.
I just wanted to play that. I remember loving that.
Oh yeah.
And then my wife and I took our two kids there for the first time, and I want to say early 2018, and that was like our family trip there. And then I was fortunate enough to go a couple times. I got invited to like give talks at the Epcot Food and Wine Festival. And then more recently had the chance to go for this taping and to bring my family. So it's been fun to go a few times over the years as our kids have gotten older, because your experience of the parks changes from like, let's go meet Elsa. And like the younger one wasn't old enough to go on the big rides and wouldn't have wanted to go anyway. To more recently, like now we have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they can go off on their own in the parks and ride rides my wife and I don't really want to go on because now we're too old to go on to handle some of the rides. Although we're still big rides people. And I feel like the last few times we've been, every time it's a little different. There's a different highlight, whatever it is. A certain ride just happens to hit at just the right moment. I'm still a pretty hardcore Space Mountain person. Although this past time, Guardians of the Galaxy, which feels to me kind of like a newer Space Mountain, was pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's a great ride. They've been opening a bunch of new stuff. You should come back again.
Yeah, anytime.
Okay, now speaking of newer rides at the park, what inspired you to do a show based on Tiana's Bayou Adventure?
So when we were there a year ago, that was the first time we rode Tiana's after it was rethemed from Splash Mountain. And so you're in the queue and you're looking at all these. I love the queues. I always love. I mean, I'd rather not. I don't need to see them for 2 hours, but I'm not someone who, even if we have a lightning lane, is going to buzz through the queue as fast as possible. Like I want to look at the scenery. I like the whatever it is, the video, the story, the build up. And we're in the line for Tiana's, and I noticed this gumbo recipe on the wall, and it was like on a lined sheet of paper, handwritten in a frame. And I stopped and I looked at it, and I get maybe because I'm into food, the recipe in particular caught my eye. And my first thought was like, is this a real recipe?
First question, question number one.
Right. Like if I took a picture of this and brought it home and followed it, would I get gumbo?
Exactly.
And then the next question was like, where did it come from? There's a lot of gumbo recipes out there.
Whose gumbo recipe is this?
Exactly. Is it just did they find it? I mean, I assume they probably put in more work than Googling gumbo recipe, but where did it come from? So I sort of tucked that away in the back of my head, and obviously I saw how much food is a part of Tiana's story and a part of the ride. So that was sort of tucked away in the back of my head. I was like, someday it'd be cool to do a story about this. And then the Disney folks reached out to me. They're like, hey, did you ever think about doing a story at Disney World? And I was like, actually.
Really? They reached out to you?
Yeah, they reached out to me. They were saying like they want to do more stuff with podcasts. Which was its own kind of incredible thing after, as I said early on, I had to tell people what a podcast was. Now I have Disney calling, which is, incredible.
The largest media company in the world calling you saying, hey, talk about us.
Yeah, so I said, actually, I wanted to do something about Tiana's. And then we ended up adding in, I was like, well, while I'm there, let's do the cantina because I'm like an old Star Wars fan. They proposed doing something on Roundup Rodeo, the barbecue restaurant in Toy Story Land, so we did that.
Right.
But the main thing I went for was Tiana's.
Okay, so the gumbo recipe that you saw, it's a real gumbo recipe? I'm assuming by now we know, right?
It's not only is it a real gumbo recipe, it's actually really like a piece of American culinary history. And this is what I didn't know until I started looking into it. I mean, I had seen Princess and the Frog a million years ago, which is obviously the movie that Tiana is based on. But what I didn't know until I really started researching it for this episode, I mean, you two may have already known this, but the character of Tiana from the movie is based off, or at least inspired by, a real person who's named Leah Chase, who is sort of the matriarch of this restaurant called Dookie Chase Restaurant in New Orleans, which is like probably the gold standard of Creole restaurants in America, the most notable, most famous Creole restaurant. It's been recognized by the James Beard Foundation as an American classic, and their gumbo is especially famous.
Oh, and that's the recipe?
And yes, and so that is it's Leah Chase's. It's the recipe from Dookie Chase. So it's not just a real recipe for gumbo. It's probably the most famous gumbo in America.
It's the mother gumbo of gumbos, right? It's the
and this is a gumbo that, I mean, so Dookie Chase opened in 1941 during segregation. So it was a place where activists gathered in its early days. It became a place where even early after integration, that you would see folks of various backgrounds coming together. It's a place that President Obama visited. A lot of celebrities have been, and it's the kind of thing where people go in and they're like, first thing you're ordering is the gumbo.
Sure. I love this story because it shows the amount of detail that Imagineering puts into even the tiniest things in the queue, right? So that kind of research probably took someone, weeks or months to set up. And, you see it for 3 minutes as you're going through the queue, but it's the kind of thing that establishes theme for a ride. So it's super important. You got to talk to Imagineering about this, right?
Yeah. So I for this episode, I interviewed a few different Imagineers. One who was involved with Oga's Cantina in the Star Wars area, one who worked on Roundup Rodeo, and then one who worked on Tiana's, which was, super interesting just to get their perspective on the process. I mean, I'm a big process person. I love nerding out on those kinds of things. And so it was fun to hear. One of the things that I learned about is that early on in the process, when the Imagineers are working on any new project, they have what they call the blue sky phase, which is just sort of no bad ideas. Everyone just throw out ideas. Whatever comes to mind, it doesn't matter how crazy it sounds, throw it out there. One thing I learned is that one of the blue sky ideas that they had on their list early on when they were designing Tiana's, because it's the ride itself is still a log flume like it was with Splash Mountain. So you're in a log, you're in this little water stream. They had thought about making, instead of water, doing lemonade. So filling the entire ride with lemonade. Because they thought, this way when people get splashed in the face, it'll taste like lemonade, and that will be fun.
There are no bad ideas at this stage.
Yeah, right.
Okay. As a diabetic, let me raise my hand. Bad idea. Okay.
The bumblebees, the wasps, you can say. But here's my question, right? So at some point you'd have to call like the people who make the water pumps. So imagine making like a 7 p.m. call to the Bosch people in Germany and saying, does this hydraulic pump, does this work with lemonade? and then having them think in German, like what do you mean?
Right. As it is, that ride is still a bit prone to breaking down.
Oh, so, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Let's not add complexity.
Let's not fill it with sugar. Let's not fill all the gears with sugar. Plus, I mean, like not only yes, when it's very hot, getting soaking wet on Tiana's is a lot of fun. You go our strategy is go on early in the day, get soaked on purpose, and you'll stay cool through the hottest part of the day. Yeah. That being said, I don't know that I'd want to be soaked in lemonade for multiple hours. That's going to get sticky.
Yeah,
and then the bees. I just picture little kids screaming through the park with a swarm of bees chasing them.
Wow. Yeah, the parents are sitting back going, "Oh, the memories."
Right. Yeah.
All right. So again, as part of this story, you spoke with the folks at Disney Food and Bev about the actual process of creating food for the park. What else did you learn from this conversation?
Well, one of the things that I love about the food, the rides, everything at Disney is just the level of detail, the thought they put into every tiny detail, and the storytelling element. Like it'd be one thing. So, like for instance, Roundup Rodeo, the barbecue restaurant at Toy Story Land. Mm-hmm. The obvious, okay, we're doing a Toy Story restaurant. Well, of course, there's going to be Buzz Lightyear and Woody somewhere, and we'll incorporate the characters, and we'll blow out the decorations, and we'll name the items on the menu after different characters. Like that's obvious. Like anyone would figure that out. But what they do is to take the story and push it forward. So now Roundup Rodeo, it's not just a lot of Toy Story decorations. It's actually a moment in time when Andy is in his backyard playing rodeo. And so you as the diner are toy sized, and everything around you is gigantic because you're the same size as the toys. And when they develop the menu, for instance, like they have this cupcake, a Forky cupcake. And they had a real discussion about whether or not, like, when in Andy's life would he be playing rodeo in the backyard? And would it make sense for Forky to still be there at that point in time? So they're literally analyzing the Toy Story
with real jobs.
timeline. Right, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
And trying to figure out... and then when they finally made the Forky cupcake, it's got this like spork-shaped sugar cookie that's sticking up out of the cupcake. You can get one of 3 different facial expressions on Forky's face on that sugar cookie. They originally had like 20-something options for the face, and they spent months discussing, debating, analyzing what the final 3 faces should be.
Yeah,
so
it's got to be in canon.
Right, in canon, and like, or at the cantina. I talked to a beverage director who designed a lot of the drinks at the cantina, and she was saying
August Cantina,
right?
Galaxy okay,
and she was saying that she had one idea for a beverage, and so every single thing the Imagineers do relating to Star Wars has to get approved by the Lucasfilm Star Wars canon department.
Yeah.
Which, like I would love to see the resumes they get at that.
Could you imagine? Yeah.
Right. Like toured Star Wars fan cons for 6 years in a movie realistic Chewbacca costume. That's an item I imagine on a resume. But they told her she couldn't name. So for this beverage director, they told her she couldn't name one of the drinks the name that she wanted because it couldn't have that name on the planet they were supposed to be on.
Really?
And so, like, that kind of thing.
So they know the language and the dialect of the planet, and they're like, we wouldn't call it that.
Right, exactly.
Huh. So there's no Rudy Tooty Fresh and Fruity on Alderaan, I guess. Let's go with that. All right.
But the funny thing is, like, then they're like, this drink is a cold brew with bourbon in it. It's like, well, okay. I don't know if they had that on Batu.
Well, I mean, bourbon makes it across the galaxy. That's
right.
That's
so
fun.
there's a happy medium between the canon part of it and the just like, we know this is a drink people are going to buy part of it.
Right. Yeah, it's super interesting to talk about stuff that doesn't make it into the parks. We had heard when they were doing the Star Wars Hotel, the Galactic Star Cruiser, that one of the Disney's Food Lab people had proposed a black pizza crust, like colored with squid ink.
Right.
And then it ultimately didn't get put into the hotel because the thought was that guests would think it was burnt and wouldn't eat it.
Oh.
And it didn't even get to a test trial, though. It was like shut down. Yeah, which I think is really interesting because like kids would probably love that.
I wonder.
Hard to say.
I wonder. Like black is a little bit of an off-putting color sometimes in food.
Right.
Like if it was a rainbow crust, obviously kids would go nuts for it. But like a black crust would look odd to people, and I would be curious.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure there'd be some who'd be like, wow, like it feels intergalactic. Like this looks like it came from another planet. And there'd be some people who are like, this doesn't look appetizing though.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it was the appetizing look about it. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah, and I guess targeting food for just kids is probably not
right. As it is, you get picky eaters, you get kids who can't handle parsley sprinkled on top of their pizza.
I'm sure.
There you go.
Good point.
Right.
So Dan, let me ask you this question. So as the host of the Sporkful, which the tagline is a podcast for eaters, not foodies, right? Mm-hmm. When you're in Disney World and you're at a restaurant with your family, how do you evaluate a restaurant as you're there? Like, can you turn it off? Or are you thinking like, how is Disney balancing price, speed, quality, consistency, authenticity, whatever?
Right. No, I mean, I definitely am thinking about, look, as a person who just loves to eat and loves food. Yeah. I mean, I'm always thinking about those things for sure. And look, I think they do a good job overall. There's plenty of good food to be found at Disney. I think that when you compare it to, when you judge it against the cost of some of the places and the time, it's always a push and pull, because you're sort of like, do we want to spend $250 and also like not be on rides for an hour and a half? On the other hand, like, we got to eat, and there's air conditioning in there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so,
spoken like a true parent.
Right. Exactly. Right. So I think you got to find a balance. We'll always do a couple of meals that are a little more expensive and a little nicer, and sit down and have a nice meal. And then sometimes we're just grabbing stuff and running. I will say one of my very favorite newer items, speaking of Tiana's, right by there, is they do like a hot honey fried chicken with, it's got like, I got to Google it. It's got like an olive tapenade and one other surprising ingredient. Let me look it up.
Really? This is at Pecos Bills in Frontierland?
It's right by there.
I mean, hot honey chicken had a moment a couple of years ago. Disney's probably a little...
it's fried chicken nuggets tossed in hot honey served with an olive tapenade. It's like a New Orleans relish. Oh, and sweet potato fries.
There you go.
It's really good. And it's a little bit out of the way. It's on that sort of like back path from Tiana's going towards Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
But it's the same stand that sells the beignets. And I think probably more people are getting the beignets there. It's funny. I was in line the last time, and I love this thing, and I was really excited. I think the olive tapenade is like salty and briny, and it adds a lot of flavor. Then you get the sweetness of the honey and the crunch of the fried chicken. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. But I'm in line, and there's a dad in front of me. He's looking at the menu, and he's like calling his wife to say like, what should I order? And he's reading her this description. He goes, it's like a hot honey chicken served with an olive tapenade. And he's like, that sounds disgusting.
And you're like, I'll have two of those.
I almost tapped him, and I was like, you're really missing out, buddy. But I really love that one.
Well, now, speaking of this most recent trip to Disney World, was there anything that you saw and you said to yourself, I got to get back to that next time that I'm here?
Ooh. There's what's the campgrounds called? Wilderness?
Fort Wilderness Campgrounds,
yeah. Right, and there's a restaurant there that's got like a barbecue buffet, is that right?
Oh, Crockett's Tavern, yeah, okay. Yeah.
I'd like to try that kind of stuff I like, and I waited way too long for the like flavored popcorn that's right by the entrance to Magic Kingdom. I would like to go back and like try different varieties of like mixing and matching different things there. That one is one that I like. I'm trying to think if there's something else. I mean, I managed to eat most of the stuff that I like. I know that this is like a very cliched answer, but I still love a Mickey bar.
There's nothing wrong with it, man.
Okay.
But I think it's not just like the nostalgia factor or the cuteness factor. Like I think that there's a million ice cream bars out there. It's like vanilla ice cream on a stick with crunchy chocolate. Like that's not special. But what makes the Mickey bar special is its shape. Mm-hmm. Because of its shape with the two ears, the Mickey bar has a much higher ratio of exterior crunchy chocolate to vanilla ice cream than most.
So it's all about surface area. Right. Yeah, clearly.
And so,
wow.
So you get
Dan's put a lot of thought into this. This is great. Yeah.
So you get more crunchy chocolate in each bite. The bites where the ear meets the head. That like acute angle right there. That's a Hall of Fame bite, let me tell you.
It's like an English muffin nooks and crannies. You get all that extra the chocolate in there. Right. Yeah, totally. Exactly. And of course, everyone knows that physiologically the ears taste better than the head.
Yeah,
so.
But what's your strategy for eating? Like, will you bite off a whole ear, or do you try to take the ear in two bites?
I do like one ear and then part of the head, and then I'll usually save the ear. Like the ear to me, the second ear is kind of like the middle of your hamburger. You kind of save that bite for last because it's the best. Yeah.
Please, what I love about that answer is you literally proved that the Sporkful is in fact a podcast for eaters, not foodies. That answer alone just nailed it.
All right, good.
So Dan, your episode came out. We're recording this on Thursday. Your episode came out on Monday. What's been the fan reaction or the listener reaction to it?
People have been super into it. I mean, I think that there are a lot of details. Even hardcore Disney folks, Disney fans who go to the parks a lot, don't know a lot of these backstories, the details. I'm sure I can't imagine how many people have walked past that gumbo recipe in the line at Tiana's and didn't know that it was like a piece of American history, and also the process. So I think that the episode is, and then also folks who are newer to the Disney World also have been excited. So I think no matter what people's relationship with Disney is, I think that there's a lot of stuff in here that folks didn't know. So I think people have been really excited to learn more about it.
Cool. Have listeners already started proposing other theme park food topics for you?
Oh yeah. Everyone sends in like, oh, you got to go to this park, you got to eat this thing, you got to try that one, So yeah, I got my work's cut out for me, Len.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you got contacts at Disney. That's awesome.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, Dan, thanks very much for being on the show and taking the time. I appreciate it. Where can people find more of you?
So the Sporkful podcast and Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, pretty much. And if you want to try out the pasta shape that I invented, there's links at sporkful.com.
Cool. Sporkful.com. Oh, it's awesome, Dan. Thanks so much. We'll put those links in the show notes. Thanks for being on the show, Dan.
All right. Thanks so much. Take care.
All right, Jim. Before we get started, let's do a quick shout out to our subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Samantha Jane, Jim Marr, Rhonda, Denise Andros, Philip LeBlanc, and Christopher Stanley. Jim, these are the members of Epcot's newest house band, Amuse-Bouche, whose set list is medleys of 30-second samples from various musical genres. Their Food and Wine opening night themes include The Number of the Beast in Black, a tribute to 80s hair metal, and Never Mind the Dirt on the Black Hole Sun for 90s grunge. True story.
Amuse-Bouche. I am amused. All right. I love that. Okay.
All right. And on to the news. Folks, the Disney Dish News is sponsored by UnlockedMagic.com. From our friends at dvcrentalstore.com. Studies show that riding Big Thunder Mountain helps with kidney stones. Our friends at unlockedmagic.com have discounted theme park tickets that'll get your family onto that and all of Disney's new and reopening rides. So get your theme park tickets at unlockedmagic.com now. Doctor's orders. All right.
Okay.
Jim, let's start with Walt Disney World. On last week's show, we mentioned that if you play a Pirate's Adventure in the Magic Kingdom, you can get a Lightning Lane for Pirates. That show came out on Monday, and later on Monday, Disney discontinued that prize. It's proof, Jim, that the internet ruins everything. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, man. Ugh.
In terms of positive news, though, we got an opening date of summer 2027 for Lakeshore Lodge, the new DVC/cash room building being built at by Fort Wilderness. So that's good. We have a date for that.
Okay. I want to say when Mr. Schul and you and I were down in Orlando last, we stood at the Contemporary and watched that thing loom up over Old Discovery Island and the waterfront at Fort Wilderness. I wonder what it looks like today.
Well, Bayou's Reconstruct has a bunch of photos. It's pretty big, and it's big from Fort Wilderness. But I think if you're looking at it from the Contemporary or any other aspect angle, it looks good. It's going to come down to the execution, right? What is it? What do the materials look like when you're in the lobby? How does the space feel? Stuff like that. So, we got to see it to rate it, right?
Okay. That's true.
Also, Jim, Disney hasn't announced it yet today, but it's Thursday, and we should be getting a Smugglers Run Mandalorian and Grogu announcement later today.
Yeah.
And Jim, you were saying it might be tied to the release of the film?
Yeah, the Star Wars Mandalorian and Grogu that arrives in theaters on May 22nd. And the way it was explained to me by folks from Disney Studios, it was a 1-2 punch. They wanted to make sure that the film pushed the new ride film for Smugglers Run, and so that would seem to be the window.
Oh, interesting. So May 22nd. So a lot of stuff happening that third week of May.
There you go.
Also, Jim, Disney confirmed on-site resort benefits for 2027, like early theme park entry, extended evening hours, and the water park on day of arrival will continue. The one interesting change that they made was campsites at Fort Wilderness no longer qualify.
Oh.
And Jim, here's why I think this happened. And I looked at some prices for summer. So campsites that sleep 8 at Fort Wilderness are going for $127 a night, or $16 per person for water park admission. So I think that's the loophole that Disney's trying to close there.
Okay. That's unfortunate. I'm talking with a lot of folks. They love that. The notion day of let's head to the water park.
Exactly. All right, Jim, let's go on to listener questions. when talking about what properties Disney should do for the Sphere, Steph writes in and says the obvious correct answer to the Sphere question is Alice in Wonderland. So, Jim, we have a couple of votes now for Alice in Wonderland, right?
Yeah. I mean, and what's interesting is actually from, if we take the template that they've done with The Wizard of Oz, and again, they cut like 20 minutes out of, the film from 39, so, and the fact that Alice in Wonderland is actually one of the shortest Disney features, it's like, hey, that, that would actually work.
Oh, interesting. All right, so that might be an idea. I still think there are better options, but that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Here's an email from Karen who says, you recently discussed Disney cruise deals. Why do you think they're offering so many discounts? Aren't they running at nearly full capacity? And they are. So if you look at Disney ships going out of Port Canaveral, where you can find the passenger numbers pretty easily, even the older ships are running at, mid 80% occupancy, and the newer ships are running, low 90s to high 90s%, depending on the time of year. The big question that I always have with that is, with 70,000 cast members worldwide, how many local cast members are on those ships? And we don't really know that. But I was talking to some friends who do cruise industry research professionally, and they note that in the last 30 to 60 days, consumer sentiment has softened, their word, by mid double digits. Future booking revenue growth has basically fallen to around 1 or 2% as well. So we're seeing a cutback in long-term future cruise plans, and it's not because of prices, because prices are only up 1 or 2%. So it's not really that. I think it could be something like the economy or people not wanting to plan that far out. With the unknowns. Jim, did you see, though, that Disney Cruise Line last week started offering 50% off the cruise fare for up to 3 kids on select sailings this fall and winter? It's called the Together at Sea Savings Deal.
Mm-hmm. By the way, speaking of which, to support this, have you seen the ad that the Disney Cruise Line is now running? It seemed to be on every night, at the very least on ABC, and it's a dad who has a little kid who can't sleep on the Disney Cruise Line, and he shows him walking his son around the ship at night.
Yeah. Oh, pulls at the heartstrings, doesn't it?
That's it exactly. It's one of these things where you then see the granddad and the father, the son who's now a father and has a child of his own. The two of them now walking the toddler around the ship, and again, it hits that sweet spot that makes you think, I got to call my kid and I got to book a cruise.
Exactly.
Really,
I thought it was great. That was very sweet.
It was.
All right, Jim. Here's an email from Michael who says the France Pavilion Theater is reopening with the same rotation of Beauty and the Beast sing-along and Impressions de France they had before. I was wondering if you guys had studied which of those films is more popular. I know they only show Impressions de France like 2 hours a day. All right, so yeah, I pulled the guest satisfaction numbers for both films. Impressions de France has a slightly higher overall average rating. The big difference, Michael, though, is which groups like each film. So Beauty and the Beast does better with children under age 12, while Impressions does better with teens, young adults, the over 30 group, and seniors. So it kind of makes sense for Disney to switch films at some point in the evening if many parents with small children have already left the park. This way they can appeal to the concentrated older crowd that are still back in World Showcase. So I put the ratings in the show notes as well if you want to examine those in detail, Michael. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim finishes the story of Disney's Live the Dream project for Disneyland's second theme park. We'll be right back.
You tell yourself, no one wants your college-era band tees. But on Depop, people are searching for exactly what you've got. You once paid a small fortune for them at merch stands. Now, a teenager who calls them vintage will offer that same small fortune back. Sell them easily on Depop. Just snap a few photos and we'll take care of the rest. Who knew your questionable music taste would be a money-making machine? Your style can make you cash. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste.
This episode is brought to you by Palmolive. Family time isn't just the big moments. It's weeknight dinners, sitting around the table, everyone talking all at once. So when the plates are empty and the sink is full, use Palmolive Ultra. Palmolive's most powerful formula removes up to 99.9% of grease, leaving your dishes sparkling clean. And the new convenient pump makes cleaning even easier, so you can spend less time tackling dishes and more time together. Shop now at palmolive.com.
This episode is brought to you by Ferrero. Soccer's biggest stage is approaching, and Ferrero is making it easy to go all in. Pick any 2 Ferrero brands from Kinder Bueno to Ferrero Rocher, and you could win the $1 million grand prize, plus an exciting range of daily and weekly prizes. Don't miss your shot. Official rules apply. Learn more at goallinandwin.com.
And we're back. All right, Jim, remember where we left off on part 2?
Well, yeah, that again, we are talking about Live the Dream, which was the Imagineers' plan for WestCOT Center. That it was going to be their reinvention of Epcot, the thing they wanted to build in Disneyland's parking lot out in Anaheim in the mid-'90s. $3 billion project filled with lots of ambitious ideas. But if we're being honest, WestCOT's origins really, the story starts back late September of '84. This is when Michael Eisner then becomes the new CEO of Walt Disney Productions. And one of the reasons that Michael was made the head of the Mouse House was that Wall Street was disappointed in how Epcot had been performing. That Walt Disney World's second gate had opened 2 years early, October of '82, and was doing okay. I mean, people were certainly extending their Walt Disney World vacations by a day or two. And, from that point of view, Epcot's successful. But what folks were saying about Epcot once they got home from the Disney World vacations was that, and this was what was getting back to Wall Street, was that it was too earnest, too educational. It was not nearly as entertaining as the Magic Kingdom. So this is why Eisner, working his punch list of gotta fix things in Florida. So again, he comes through the door September of '84. By June of '88, that's when Norway and the Maelstrom, the park's first thrill ride, opens. Very next fall, October of '89, this is when Wonders of Life, with its Body Wars motion-based simulator, opens at Future World. And if you remember, a lot of the stuff the park was pushing out during this same era, we're about to launch the Disney Decade. And for Epcot, for example, during the Disney Decade, we were going to get a Switzerland pavilion that had, a Matterhorn from Disneyland, and we were going to see the expansion of the Japan pavilion, and they were going to throw Mount Fuji behind that, and that was going to have a roller coaster inside of it. But Len, on a parallel track, Eisner is looking for ways to turn Disneyland, which again, as Jim Schull, our partner on Disney Unpacked, constantly says, Disneyland, if we're being honest, is the world's most famous regional theme park. And Michael Eisner is now trying to turn Disneyland into a destination resort. So, so that's the thing. We need something in the parking lot that's going to make people want to buy, not come for the day, but to buy a vacation package, book a stay in a Disney-owned hotel, to shop in our stores, eat in our restaurants. Yeah. But at the same time, here's Eisner working with the Imagineers on ways to make Epcot more exciting, and Michael is looking at all of these cool rides that are now being developed for Florida, and it's like, we need to bring this stuff to Anaheim. How are we going to do that? So this is essentially where WestCOT comes from. Eisner wanting to use all of the money that Imagineer was using to develop new ride shows and attractions for Epcot down in Florida and spreading the wealth, so to speak, bringing those very same ideas to Anaheim. And that there's also another aspect of the story that doesn't often get talked about, and that's, well, look, when Epcot first opened in October of '82, the company promoted this project as Walt's last best dream, which to me always always seemed...
Yeah, I see where you're going with this. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, Walt wanted to build Epcot the city, not Epcot the theme park. But again, they wanted, that mantle, that this was the last thing that Walt Disney worked on. And by the way, again, if we're talking about being honest here, Michael Eisner, the first 10 years that Michael ran the company, early 80s into the mid 90s, this is a guy who's starting to get a little high in his own supply, Len. Michael had basically nothing but success since he walked through the door at Disney. And in fact, the press had begun calling Eisner the next Walt Disney. And Michael is starting to believe them. In fact, there's this very famous story of he's in a meeting with the board of directors, and they haven't formally started yet. But Michael starts talking and says, "Hey, did you ever notice that Disney is spelled D-I-S-N-E-Y and Eisner is spelled E-I-S-N-E-R?" He says, "Look, I'm 2 letters away from being Walt." And it's like, there we go. That's it.
Yeah, okay.
That's the appropriate noise line. So,
yeah, all right.
Anyway.
Okay, but still. All right. So, Epcot West.
Yeah.
WestCOT, if you will.
And again, and look, Michael has just opened Disney MGM in 89. Huge success right off the bat. They're also right at the same time building Disneyland Paris out in that beach field 30 miles outside of Paris. And it's going to be the most beautiful park and resort that Disney's ever built. And so this is a Michael Eisner thinking, I can keep going. I can keep doing this. Let's look at bringing Epcot to Anaheim. And this is where Live the Dream enters the equation. Now, for years, the company had been surveying guests, holding focus groups, and they're looking for new ways for people to experience the Disney parks. And something that keeps coming up with these surveys, with these focus groups, Len, is that people's desire to keep the fun going, to extend the Disney magic. And as much as these people loved the theming over at the Contemporary or the Poly or the Grand Flow, what they really wanted to do was not leave the theme park. They didn't want to go back to their hotel. They wanted to stay for the night in the Magic Kingdom, which from the Imagineering point of view, it's like, this is a very dumb idea. It's like,
why? What? Literally the thing I want most in life. Go ahead.
Well, but this is the thing. Realistically, from midnight to 8 a.m., this is not an especially magical time. This is when they're pressure washing the street. This is when, people are lying on their back scraping the gum off of the bottom of park benches. There's some magical individual walking around the park with big armfuls of toilet paper to restock the restrooms. This is the non-magical stuff that really makes the park run.
If Imagineering told me that, I think my response would be, you have your opinion, madam, and I have mine, right?
Well, no, and you are not wrong. The true Disney theme park diehards still had this romantic notion about, if I stayed overnight, it would be magical, unforgettable, and the way they continued to enthuse about this idea when surveyed or when in focus groups, the Imagineers like, all right, we have to explore this, and the first real test actually comes with Disneyland Paris. But what's interesting, Len, is it's driven by the miserable weather that guests regularly encounter.
Oh, yeah. The people don't think about that because, there's a whole, springtime in Paris is lovely. Well, yeah, but how about the 3 months before that?
There we go. No, I mean, cold and wet. And so
rain.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Which meant you weren't going to be able to do what you do in Anaheim and Orlando. You weren't first going to be able to make guests get in line at a ticket booth. And then after they've gone through that line and bought their tickets to then stand in a second line to actually enter the theme park, you were going to have to provide some sort of cover for them. And so for a time, what they eyeballed was like, all right, let's put the ticket booths, let's put the actual entrance complex under, a big faux empty building, sort of like Sleeping Beauty Castle was back in 55.
Really? But so giant building as the entrance?
As the entrance / cover.
Oh, got it. Okay.
All right. And I want to remind folks that when the park first opened in 55, there was nothing in Sleeping Beauty Castle. In fact, the walkthrough did not get shoehorned into the building and then open till April of 57. But it's Eddie Sato, the late great Eddie Sato, who's the guy who's like, no, don't, let's be smart. Let's not build a big empty building and then after the fact put something in it. It's like, look, it's right there at the front and we have all of this research. Let's build a hotel, an actual working hotel, that will provide the cover we're looking for, but also a new revenue stream for the resort. And so when Disneyland Paris opens April of 1992, the hotel is right there at the entrance. It quickly becomes one of the resort's most popular features. People pay top dollar for the privilege of staying there and having a view down into Main Street, USA. And mind you, Len, one night a year, they get what they it's like if you happen to be there the night that they're setting up the Christmas tree down in Town Square, you get a magical experience. The other 364 days a year, you're looking out at a bunch of trucks that are, hang on, we got a bunch of plush we have to carry into the Emporium.
Absolutely fine.
All right.
It's still totally different. So if I remember correctly, I've only been in the Disneyland hotel in Paris a couple of times. That's sort of vaguely Grand Floridian themed?
Very much so. It's that sort of, elaborate cookie, ornate cookie style.
Gingerbread. Yeah. Okay.
Spring is in the air, which means now is the time to save during spring outdoor power deals at the Home Depot. Make cleanup easier when you go cordless with the Milwaukee M18 string trimmer, designed to deliver more runtime, more speed, and maximum performance. Then grab a select Milwaukee fuel attachment, like the pole saw, edger, or brush cutter, included at no extra cost when you buy the Milwaukee M18 string trimmer. Shop 7 days of spring outdoor power deals at the Home Depot, now through April 29th.
Get business done with the new American Express Graphite Business Cash Unlimited card. With unlimited 2% cash back on all eligible purchases, unlimited 5% cash back on flights and prepaid hotels booked through American Express Travel Online, and a flexible spending capacity that can grow with your business, you'll have the confidence to keep building. Apply today and earn a welcome offer of $1,500 cash back after you spend $50,000 in qualifying purchases on your new card within the first 6 months of card membership. Terms apply. Learn more at go.amex/graphite.
All right, so if we now pivot back to WestCOT, which again, want to remind folks from last week's show, it was going to be built out in the parking lot and then have to deal with various aspects of the Disney cone, that zoning thing that Walt was able to persuade the Anaheim City Council and the Planning Commission to adopt back in '64. That prevented new hotels that are being built around Disneyland to visually intrude on the theme park. Now, the problem now is how to make all of the multi-story hotels that have been built around Harbor, Catella, and West Street. Yeah. Those are the three streets that wrap around the old Disneyland parking lot. And, how to make those not visually intrude. And this is where WestCOT and its 7 wonders come in, Len. So
what are the 7 wonders?
Okay. Now, on the Future World inspired portion of WestCOT, you would have found the Wonders of Living, which combined the Wonders of Life and Journey into Imagination. You would have found the Wonders of Earth, which would have featured a lot of components of the land. And then finally, Wonders of Space, which would have taken chunks of Horizon and Mission Space. Now, on the other hand, in the World Showcase-inspired portions of this theme park, you would have found the Old World. This is a section that celebrates Europe. You would have found the New World. This one would have celebrated the Americas. And then finally, an Asia section and an Africa section. Now, just to orientate folks, the New World, that would have largely been built facing Disneyland, the Disneyland Plaza we know today. In fact, it would have had architecture that aped the look of the train station and Main Street, USA.
For continuity, yeah. You're not going to do, probably doing a pagoda or something else that's probably not great. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
it would throw people off.
There we go. In fact, a lot of what was going to be built here was inspired by the famous Crystal Palace. But now, alongside of Harbor Boulevard, we would have had the Old World, the European theme section. Whereas Catella, and that's a roadway between the Disneyland parking lot and the Anaheim Convention Center, this would have been Asia. And then over on West Street, which today is known as Disneyland Drive, that would have been Africa.
Oh.
Okay, but again, as we mentioned on last week's show, the first 3 floors of each of these enormous show buildings that house the New World, the Old World, Africa, and Asia, this would have been where WestCOT's internationally themed rides, shows, and attractions, not to mention shops and restaurants, would have been located.
All right.
All right, then the 3 floors above that would be where the guests could stay and peer out, in the wee small hours and watch as the horticultural team, replanted flower beds. All right, ooh, magical stuff, Len. Very exciting.
So 3 floors. How many rooms do you think there were on those 3 floors combined? Are we talking about like 500 rooms, 1,000 rooms?
Actually, the what's interesting, at full build out, there were supposed to be 2,000 rooms. And what was interesting is the Americas was going to be almost boutique hotel. There were only going to be a handful of rooms there. Whereas, if you think about the length of Harbor Boulevard, the length of Catella, the length of West Disneyland Drive.
Those are major city blocks.
There we go. And, so significant number of rooms in those sections of the hotel. Now, interesting to double back to the Future World stuff. Len, that was actually going to be in the very center of WestCOT Center, directly underneath Space Station Earth, which was going to be a golden 300-foot tall version of Epcot Center's Spaceship Earth, which, by the way, only 180 feet tall.
What?
Yeah.
That is one big golf ball.
That
is 300 feet.
300.
So wait, yeah. All right, so somebody who's better at geometry is going to remind me. But how does the volume of a sphere expand as its radius increases? It's some sort of it's exponential. But go ahead.
No.
So that's a big space.
That's a big space. But speaking of a big space, what Disney planned on doing was in the very center of the old Disneyland parking lot was digging a 60-acre hole, right in the center there, because that's the most interesting thing about the original WestCOT plan was that a lot of the future world attractions, so to speak, again, the wonders of living, the wonders of nature, or the wonders of Earth, the wonders of space, going to be underground. And there were Imagineers who sort of raised their hands like, it's going to be underground, like beneath the Planet of the Apes. So,
okay, yeah, all right.
We lost the war against the gorillas? What would happen here?
Really? Underground exhibits?
Well, more to the point, they were burying the needle in the exact... Again, remember, this is Michael Eisner who wants to make an entertaining, fun version of Epcot. So, for example, there's concept art out there for Space Station Earth, which is on this lush green island in the middle of a lagoon. And then, the inside of that giant globe you were mentioning, that they were going to have a motion-based simulator ride, that effectively took you through the history of man. And then below ground, you'd have these things that would speed you to the individual buildings that were out on the periphery that held the wonders of living, the wonders of Earth, and the wonders of space. But
wow. Okay.
And then to put a further weird little bend on the story, the 60 acres of dirt that got hauled out of the ground. There was one iteration of this plan where it all gets trucked over to Long Beach. It then gets poured into the harbor there next to the Queen Mary, because remember, Disney, during the same window of time, is also thinking about building Port Disney, the home of the original Disney Seas theme park.
Could you imagine the paperwork you would have to do to say, I want to dig up land in Anaheim and dump it into the Pacific?
Let me just cut to the chase here. When they took this idea to the California Coastal Commission, it was not, it was not no, it was hell no.
It was received coolly, is what I'm hearing.
There we go. Okay. And speaking of received coolly, When Disneyland Paris opens in April of 1992, again, the most beautiful park, that the company built up until that time, it kind of stumbles out of the gate. It's not making its attendance or financial projections, and Michael Eisner suddenly is thinking, okay, we have one $3 billion project that isn't necessarily doing what I wanted. Do I really want to be building a second $3 billion project while that one? So this is when the plans for WestCOT get revisited. They do what the Imagineers call a reduction in scope. So there's a version of WestCOT that's only $2 billion, and it's now all above ground. And then over time, the company abandons that, and that's when we get our $1.2 billion California adventure. And by the way, Len, that $1.2 billion, that pays for the theme park, that pays for Downtown Disney, the Grand Californian Hotel, the Disneyland Plaza between the parks, and even the Mickey and Pals parking structure. So they stretched those dollars as far as they can go.
I'll give you, Jim, that $1.2 billion paid for Downtown Disney, the Grand Californian Hotel, the plaza, and the parking structure. I don't think they spent just $1.2 billion on DCA, because 10 years later, they spent another billion, right? So that was basically $1.2 billion was all of those things and a deposit.
There we go.
A minimum viable product for DCA. Okay, go ahead.
Not going to debate that point, given the continued reinvestment in that theme park.
Exactly. So we don't end up with hotels on top of attractions.
We do not. We do not. But what's kind of interesting is, if you think about it, you still have a whole bunch of people who stay in the Grand Californian who get up in the morning and can peer down into Paradise Bay.
And the Disneyland Hotel in Paris is still extremely popular and looks good.
Yeah, and now speaking of which, look, it's not that the live the dream idea necessarily died. It did get resurrected in somewhat mutated form. For example, if you look at the Miracosta at Tokyo Disney Seas, or likewise the more recently added to that resort, the Fantasy Springs Hotel. And by the way, again, Michael Eisner did want to build a more fun version of Epcot and didn't get his chance. But Len, I'm not sure that idea died. In fact, do you remember that piece of concept art that bubbled up back in March for what they're saying is Shanghai's second gate?
Project Atlas. Yeah.
There we go.
There was a hotel there, right?
Yes, there was.
And was there a sphere too?
Well, it's a pretty smeary piece of concept art. But it would look like there's an Epcot sphere right in the middle of that thing too. And what's interesting is, if the stories are true, sometime later this year we are going to hear about Shanghai's second gate. It's going to be an official announcement, because we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of the opening of that park, and it's just going to be kind of interesting to see if we do finally get our fun version of Epcot where we can in fact live the dream.
I would make a special trip just to experience it.
Same thing here.
Fantastic. All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where our latest exclusive show is Magic Kingdom Walk Around, Designing Piston Peak in Real Time. And there's a link in the show notes. We've been talking about Disney's California Adventure, and that originally previewed a water ride that was never constructed. Over 25 years later, the ride is coming to Pixar Pier as Coco. Coco aims high despite its limited space, and the latest Disney Journey with Jim Scholl covers the story, and you can watch it now on YouTube. There's a link in the show notes. On next week's show, it's a listener-suggested topic that starts with Maxwell House Coffee in Disneyland. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len at terrainplans.com. Also, check out The Case 4 with Chris Cox, a new podcast where Chris, Jim, and I debate one theme park topic at a time. and you get to vote on who's right. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Christie and David Gray, selling faithful recreations of Knee-High, Tab, Squirt, and Dixie Cola at the 2026 Moxie Festival, celebrating New England's classic soft drink, running July 10th through the 12th at Lisbon High School, at Park at the Midtown Shopping Center across the street, in beautiful downtown Lisbon, Maine. While Eric and David are doing that, please go onto iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Casita Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.